What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. There was some really exciting news that just came out today from World of Warcraft in terms of the new talent trees in the War Within. They released 4 of them, 4 new hero talent trees for us to look at. I'm only going to look at the first one in this video, which is the Blood and Unholy DK one, but is really, really cool. They had a whole sort of post about talking about the concepts and all the different reasoning why behind what they're making, and then they introduced them. So the Sand LAYN is the one that we're going to look at today, but there is a bunch of other ones. There's the Chrono Warden, which I believe has augmentation plus preservation put together. There's the Lightsmith, Holy and Prop Pally, and then there is the Mountain Thane, the Fury Protection Warrior. So I was going to do all of them in one video, but that was going to take way too long. So we're just going to talk about the Sand LAYN one today, the Unholy plus Blood DK, and they have it in a little tree right here. So I'm going to talk about each of the columns really briefly, and then I'm going to dive into each individual talent choice and how I think it's going to be really impactful on your gameplay as a Blood or Unholy DK, depending on which one you want to do. I'm going to get my notes over here. So yeah, let's just dive into it. So this tree, from what I can tell right now, the Sand LAYN tree, true to its name, Sand LAYN is actually a talent in the Shadow Priest tree that has to do with healing, right? It's all about healing. So true to its name, there is a lot of defense and sustain in this tree, and also some disease manipulation, a couple of interesting utility spells, but primarily this tree is centered around this first capstone ability called Vampiric Strike. So here's what it does. Death Coil and Death Strike have a 10% chance to make your next Heart Strike or Scourge Strike become Vampiric Strike. So obviously Heart Strike is for Blood, Scourge Strike is for Unholy. They can both become Vampiric Strike. Vampiric Strike heals you for 3% of your max HP and grants you Essence of the Blood Queen, increasing your haste by 1.5% up to 7.5 for 20 seconds. So this buff is a very important part of this, and we're going to read the other talents in a second. But this Vampiric Strike, just right off the bat, is kind of insane, right? 3% of your maximum HP. By the time we get to the War Within, remember, there's no stat squish. So 3% of, let's say, 2 million health, right, is 60k. That's a 60k heal every single time. Like right now, the tanks in the game have 1.3 to 1.5 million health. When they're in their cooldowns, like Vampiric, like Vamp Blood for Blood DK, then you're getting 30% more HP. Like you can already get up to over 2 million health in the current game. By the time we get to the War Within, it's going to be even crazier, right? So 3% of your max HP as a Blood DK is disgusting, and if you can trigger this Vampiric Strike a lot, then you're going to be healing for a lot. So let's see what this does. We're going to go right down the middle of the tree first, and then I'm going to talk about the side column. So second one, Blood-Soaked Ground. While you're within your Death and Decay, your physical damage taken is reduced by 5%, and your chance to gain Vampiric Strike is increased by 5%. So actually good for both Blood and Unholy, because they both have to have Death and Decay down in Mythic Plus. In Raid, they don't have to as much, so slightly less value in Raid there, but absolutely in Mythic Plus, you know, your Heart Strike and your Scourge Strike are cleaving inside of your D&D, right? So you need to have that down. There were some people in the comments who were complaining about this, being like, stop making, you got rid of the Rune of Power for mages because it was such, like, degenerate gameplay. But I think that the difference between Rune of Power and Death and Decay, they're so different. It's not even funny. They're not even close. Yes, they're both circles that you put on the ground, but the Death and Decay one is much bigger, and it just fits more thematically with Deathline, and I'm okay with Blizzard creating classes or specs that have little niches that you have to play around. Like, every spec in the game has something that you have to play around that is interesting, that you have to think about, that sometimes alters your gameplay, and I think it's fine that Death and Decay is still a thing in the game, and that they're leaning into it a little bit in this talent here. So, higher chance to trigger Vampiric Strike when you're in D&D. Cool. Frenzy Bloodthirst. Essence of the Blood Queen stacks 2 additional times and increases your Death Coil and Death Strike by 5%. So Essence of the Blood Queen is the haste buff that you're getting after you press Vampiric Strike. So The way this works is you press Vampiric Strike and you get 1.5% haste for 20 seconds. If you press Vampiric Strike again, you'll have 3% haste for 20 seconds. Now, I don't know if it keeps extending the buff forever or if it's like a Mongoose Bite window where as soon as you trigger it once, the 20-second window starts and starts counting down, and then you just fit in as many Vampiric Strikes into that 20-second window as you can to keep your haste going. And then once the 20 seconds is over, it resets. I think that's how it works, but we don't actually know. But just understand that this now stacks 2 additional times. So instead of it going to 7.5%, it's going to go up to 10.5%. 7.5 plus 1.5 is 9. 9 plus 1.5 is 10.5%. So you're going to get up to 10.5% more haste for free, which is really good. Now, this whole row is going to be about this Essence of the Blood Queen haste buff window. It's all about that. That's what this middle column is about. So let's keep going. Heart Strike and Scourge Strike extend the duration of Essence of the Blood Queen by 0.5 seconds. Vampiric Strike increases the extension by 100%. So, your Vampiric Strike is going to extend the duration by 1 second instead of 0.5. That's what I'm reading there. So your regular abilities, of course, as soon as you get the Essence of the Blood Queen buff, if you don't get another Vampiric Strike right away, your Heart Strike and Scourge Strike are still going to extend that haste buff, which is good. Very, very nice. Those are your most commonly hit abilities, in Mythic Plus anyway. Scourge Strike, of course, cleaving and consuming those diseases that you have on the enemy. So this is really good. Now, it's going to extend it by 1 second if you can Vampiric Strike over and over again, which we'll talk about in a second. And, of course, instead of it being 20 seconds, you can extend this. It looks like it's indefinite. You can just keep extending this forever. So my idea of it being like, hey, here's a 20-second window, and that's all you get, like a Mongoose Bite window, that seems to not be true. It seems like you can just keep this buff up permanently if you're able to continue to Vampiric Strike or Heart Strike, Scourge Strike often enough to keep it going. I think ideally you're going to have to be pressing Vampiric Strike enough times to keep the buff going. That's what I'm looking at here. Here's the final capstone. Gift of the Sand LAYN. While Vampiric Blood or Dark Transformation is active, you gain Gift of the Sand LAYN. Gift of the Sand LAYN increases the effectiveness of your Essence of the Blood Queen by 100% and replaces your Heart Strike and Scourge Strike with Vampiric Strike for the duration. So here's what it's doing. The original buff stacks up to 10.5% because of this, 2 additional stacks. So instead of 7.5% haste, it's 10.5% haste. That now gets doubled to 21% haste, which now makes this a really formidable buff if you can keep it stacked up. Now, this is also transforming Heart Strike and Scourge Strike into Vampiric Strike all the time when you have these buffs going. So it also says it increases the effectiveness of your Essence of the Blood Queen by 100%. So not just the haste buff, but I believe the duration can, instead of it stacking to going for 20 seconds, it should go for up to 40 seconds, it looks like. So if you keep extending this buff through Insight Terror, right, the extension, you should be able to extend it. Instead of extending only to 20 seconds, you can go all the way to 40 seconds. So this whole sort of combo it basically means that when you pop your major cooldown, either Vamp Blood or Dark Transformation, you should be able to get all the way up to the 21% haste buff very easily because you're just Vampiric Striking over and over and over again because you've converted it, right? And then that buff is going to now last for 40 seconds. So that should give you enough time to get back into your Vamp Blood or Dark Transformation buff time. Because for Blood DK, Vamp Blood is a 1.5 minute cooldown. But I was talking to Lynx, he's a really good Blood DK that I play with, and I was saying, if you have Red Thirst, how long can you keep, like, what's the cooldown reduction you can get on Vamp Blood? And he basically said it's up like 80% of the time for him in dungeons and stuff. So let me know what you guys think about this if you're a Blood DK main. But my understanding is that you're probably going to be able to get your Vampiric Blood down to like a 30-second cooldown, I would say. And this extension now, because of Gift of the Sand LAYN, doubles the effectiveness, which means you can have this buff up for 40 seconds, which means you can just chain one buff into another buff if you can keep pressing Vampiric Blood. Now, Dark Transformation. If we look at that, you've got it up here. It's only a 45-second cooldown, and if you take Unholy Command, it reduces it by 15 seconds. Now, maybe, is it already giving me that buff? Probably is, right? Maybe, is it a 1-minute cooldown? I think it's a 1-minute cooldown if I didn't have that, right? Let me just check that really quick. We'll just put some points in. Boom. Oh, no. Whoops. I made a mistake. Put it here. There we go. Okay, we'll just do this really quick. Let me just see if it's a 1-minute cooldown. I just did the wrong thing again. I'm so stupid. Here we go. Here we go. Wait, we just can't get any of that? There we go. We changed it. Here we go. So, let's just see if it goes to a minute. So, I believe this is a 45-second cooldown if you're taking... Yeah, so it's a 1-minute cooldown. If you take Unholy Command, you're getting 15 seconds off, which makes it a 45-second cooldown, which, again, I believe if you're playing correctly with this talent here, you will be able to extend this buff up to 40 seconds and maybe even just keep it going. I'm not entirely sure how this works, but if you just keep Vamp striking, I think you're going to keep this duration going, which means you'll be able to chain it into your next Dark Transformation. That's my understanding of this. Now, you also have Eternal Agony, which increases the duration of Dark Transformation, which means you could, I don't know how long realistically you can keep this sucker going because it only lasts for 15 seconds. Maybe you get Dark Transformation up for like 20 to 22, 23 seconds, and then it's off cooldown for another 20 seconds, and then it's back. So the uptime is going to be really, really massive, I think, on Dark Transformation as well. Certainly for your blood decays with Vamp Blood, they can keep this up for a very, very long time. So I know I'm stressing on this for a while, but this is really important to understand. This is going to give you 21% more haste, and you're realistically going to be able to have this buff up, I would say, most of the time, if not all the time. So that's just a huge thing to understand about this talent tree, and I think it makes it really formidable. Now, with all these trees, just so you guys understand, you're going to be able to get every single one of these points. You're not missing any of these points. The only choice you have to make is these choice nodes, and we're going to get to them right now. The left side of the left column here basically has some utility. It has disease extension, and then it has a really good buff down here we're going to talk about. So here's the utility. Raise Ally revives players at full health and grants you an absorb shield equal to 20% of your max health. Again, we talked about how much max health you're going to have. It'll be like 2 to 3 million. So 20% of that is going to be an outrageous amount. So this might be interesting. I mean, you know, it's only going to be used if you're reviving an ally. So it's probably not as good as the other talent, realistically speaking. Vampiric Seed, Death's Advance, and Wraithwalk movement speed increased by 10%. That's great utility for a Death Knight. Movement speed has been like a problem for them for a long time, I think. Obviously, you have 2 charges of Death's Advance now. It's not as bad. But activating Death's Advance or Wraithwalk increases 4 nearby allies' movement speed by 20% for 5 seconds. So that's basically like a roar, like a Druid roar. That is very good. It's like a Windrush totem. It has that same effect, right? So that's really cool. I think for Mythic Plus in particular, nice little piece of utility there. Now, Infliction of Sorrow. When Vampiric Strike damages an enemy affected by Blood Plague or Virulent Plague, it consumes the disease, dealing 200% of the remaining damage. Let's just pause there for a second. Vampiric Strike replaces Heart Strike or Scourge Strike. Heart Strike and Scourge Strike will cleave everything inside your D&D. Scourge Strike hits up to 7 additional enemies while you remain within your D&D. That's really important, right? Because that now means, I think it means that it's going to consume the disease on all of them. All 7 targets will get consumed, and it'll do 200% of the remaining damage. That's how I'm reading this right now, which is a crazy amount of damage. And then you have to obviously reapply your disease, which is kind of annoying. But let's read the second part. While Gift of the Sand LAYN is active, which again is this bottom part, which activates when you do Dark Transformation or Vampiric Blood, which we've said your uptime on this might be really high, right? While you're in your major cooldown, Vampiric Strike no longer consumes the disease. It extends the duration of the disease by 3 seconds and deals 20% of the remaining damage to the enemy. That is insane. So it's doing 20% of the remaining damage and then extending it, which means you don't have to focus as much on pressing your disease spells. You can instead focus on pressing other buttons that are going to do more damage, like Epidemic or Scourge Strike or your Heart Strike / Vampiric Strike for Blood DK. So I know for DKs, weaving in your disease spreading is just part of your rotation, but I'm wondering how much this might change your rotation. If you're getting your diseases extended for free, is that going to change kind of your rotational play? I would love to hear from you guys in the comments about this. If you play DK, what do you think about this part in particular? Is it going to change the way that you play your game? Let's go to the next one. Visceral Regeneration. Your Heart Strike and Scourge Strike have a 3% per stack of Essence of the Blood Queen to refund a rune. This is kind of complicated, but here's what this means. Vampiric Strike doubles the chance to refund a rune. Essence of the Blood Queen is, of course, this haste buff. It stacks up to 10.5%, which, again, that is the 1.5 is 1 stack, and then we go 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5 is 5 stacks. Add 2 more because of Frenzy Bloodthirst. That's 7 stacks is what we can get in total. Okay, 7 stacks. Your Heart Strike and Scourge Strike have a 3% chance per stack of the essence. So 3 times 7 is 21, right? 21%. Right, 7, 14, 20. Yeah. To refund a rune. So you have a 21% chance to refund a rune once you have this thing stacked all the way. This haste buff is stacked all the way up. That is insane. A 21% chance to refund runes is very high. So again, if you can keep yourself inside this buff with Vamp Blood uptime or Dark Transformation uptime, then you can have not only the 21% haste, but a 21% chance to refund a rune, which is insane. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. Yeah, I just want to make sure I do the math right. That's really crazy to me. I think refunding runes is like such a fundamental part of DK that, does not happen very much. Like, there are ways to do it, of course, but getting a 21% chance to just refund a rune all the time is crazy. That's going to make your resource generation really, really high, which makes your damage and healing output even higher. So this one is like, in my mind, this is kind of like the MVP of the whole tree. Of course, you have to get the buffs themselves. These buffs are very, very good. 21% haste is great, but this thing is nuts to me. This resource generation is really crazy. Let's talk about the right side of the tree. More utility here. Vampiric Aura. Your leech is increased by 3%. While Lichborn is active, the leech amount is doubled, and it affects 4 nearby allies. So you get 6% leech, and that goes to 4 nearby allies. 6% leech to everybody is actually really good. That's really, really good. So just a little bit of a help to your teammates. Might be good, might not be better than the other one. The other one is Icebound Fortitude reduces all damage you take by an additional 30%. Based on your missing health. Icebound is already giving you 30% DR. So that's 60% DR for a little bit of time. It doesn't last forever. Based on your missing health. So you're not going to get the full amount necessarily. Even if you got 10 or 15% more, that's 45% DR. If you got 20% more, that's a 50% DR. That's disgusting. As if you needed more survivability on a DK. Killing enemies that grant honor or experience reduces the cooldown of Icebound Fortitude by 3 seconds. That is crazy. I don't know how this is going to work once you're max level. If you're max level and you're not getting experience anymore from killing a monster, do you get the cooldown reduction? I don't know. It's kind of a weird quirk there. But even just the baseline effect of getting up to 30% more DR is really, really crazy. Okay, let's get this one. Blood is Life. Vampiric Strike has a chance to summon a Blood Beast to attack your enemy for 10 seconds. We don't know what the chance on this is. But remember, your ability to press Vampiric Strike is 100% of the time during your big cooldown. So you're very likely going to get this beast while you have Dark Transformation up or Vamp Blood. Okay. Each time the Blood Beast attacks, it stores a portion of the damage dealt And when the Blood Beast dies, it explodes, dealing 50% of the damage accumulated to nearby enemies and healing the Death Knight for the same amount. What I'm wondering about this, does your haste value affect the attack speed of this minion, and therefore the amount of damage it's capable of doing? If it's attacking faster, it's going to do more damage, then it's going to explode for more damage, right? We're getting 21% haste from Vampiric Strike. Is that going to affect this? Also, your mastery on Unholy increases the damage of your minions. So the damage that this guy does, he's a minion, right? I'm assuming he's a minion. And the more damage he does on his attacks, which you're buffing with your mastery, the more damage he's going to do when he explodes, which is really, really crazy, right? Was anything else? Minion. All enemies within 8 yards take increased damage from your minions. That's another one. That doesn't matter, but you could potentially take Unholy Aura as well and get an additional buff to that as well. Also, you have Unholy Assault, which increases your haste by 20%, right? Sending you into an Unholy Frenzy, increasing all damage that you do. Sorry, I thought I gave you haste. Did it not used to give you haste? It gives you damage. Never mind. I mean, that's going to give you more damage, which is good. This is going to make this guy do more damage. But my point is, I wonder if attack speed affects this, and I wonder if your mastery as an Unholy DK affects this. If it does, that's pretty cool. It's going to do more damage. Now, here's the final choice node. Your Death Coil and Death Strike have a 15% chance to trigger Vampiric Strike when damaging enemies below 35% health, and it is guaranteed to critically strike. So this is a really, really crazy execute window, right? For your Unholy DK in particular, I would say. But either one of these specs triggering Vampiric Strike is going to trigger this haste bonus, which goes up to 21%. It's going to trigger the Visceral Regeneration, which gives you 21% chance to refund a rune. It all works together, right? So being able to guarantee a chance on that Vampiric Strike is crazy. I mean, it's not guaranteed, sorry. But just having an additional chance to trigger it for free is really, really crazy in my opinion. So that's really cool. It basically means that, like, when you're Heart Striking, you're Vampiric Striking. When you're Death Striking, you're also potentially Vampiric Striking, right? When you're Scourge Striking, it turns into Vampiric Strike, so you're Vampiric Striking. When you're Death Coiling, you're potentially Vampiric Striking as well, which is just everything possible to make this buff keep stacking is what you're trying to do there. Here's the last one. You store 50% of all shadow damage dealt into your Blood Beast to explode for additional damage when it expires. So this is kind of insane. Not only are you going to buff the damage that your little beast does with your haste and your mastery as an Unholy DK, but 50% of the shadow damage that you deal is also going to go into that shadow beast, and when he blows up, he's going to do even more damage. So this is like a lot of damage in AoE if you can do it right. Remember, you're doing a ton of damage, shadow damage in particular. Everything you do as an Unholy DK does shadow damage, right? Timmy does shadow damage. Scourge Strike does shadow damage. Your Disease does shadow damage. Epidemic does shadow damage. Your Unholy Blight adds additional diseases that will do shadow damage. Even Blood DK does a bunch of shadow damage as well. A-Bomb Limb does shadow damage. Your Blood Boil, which is your main disease, does shadow damage. Death and Decay does shadow damage. And Bone Storm for a Blood DK does shadow damage. So this thing seems really, really crazy. There's a lot of damage wrapped up in this little beast. There's some good utility on this side. On this side, the left side, you've got some good utility as well with the sort of mini roar that you can give to your team with Vampiric Seed. And then this stuff, I mean, you're not even gonna have to choose between these. The only choices you have to make are the choice nodes themselves. You're gonna get access to every single one of these points. So I feel like there is a lot going on here, but in particular, this main column in the middle talking about this haste buff that you get for 21% more haste, and you're healing for 3% of your max HP every single time you press Vampiric Strike. I feel like Unholy DKs are going to be insanely tanky. Their sustain is going to be so strong. Like, so strong. And for Blood DKs, it's just icing on the cake. You're getting even more healing than you already had. 21% haste, 21% chance to get a rune back, which is really insane. I still think this is the MVP talent in this entire tree. And then extra utility here, some damage with this Blood Beast, and some extra disease extension right here with Infliction of Sorrow. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm going to do this for every single one of these new trees that we're seeing. This one just struck me as being very powerful. It's the one that I wanted to start off with, and I think that this is like just absolutely insane all around for either Unholy or Blood, depending on which one you're going to be running with. I can't even imagine what the other trees are because this one just seems really overpowered to me. So hopefully the other trees are just as good. I would love to hear what you guys think about that. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm going to keep covering content from the War Within on this channel. And yeah, there's more to come. Thanks for watching. I will see you all in the next one.